It's the Real News Network. I'm Greg Wilpert coming to you from Quito, Ecuador. The ruling coalition in Germany has been debating for about 2 years whether to lease Heron attack drones. The Israeli company Aerospace Industries manufactures these drones and would lease 16 of them to Germany for the cost of about 1 billion euros. The deal hinges on a decision of the German Social Democratic Party, the SPD. Until recently, the SPD objected to the deal, arguing that the German military does not need offensive drones capable of carrying heavy ordnance. However, merely a week after the massacre of Palestinians in Gaza on March 30th, the SPD changed its mind and decided to go ahead with leasing the Israeli drones. Joining me to discuss this issue is Shir Hever. Shir is a Real News correspondent in Heidelberg, Germany. His book, The Privatization of Israeli Security, was published by Pluto Press in 2017. Thanks for being here, Shir.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
So, the cost of a Heron drone is estimated to be about $10 million each. So why is Germany willing to lease 16 drones from Israel for 1 billion euros when it could have bought 100 drones for that much money?
Well, first of all, the German military doesn't actually need these drones. If anything, the German military expressed the desire to buy surveillance drones. And surveillance drones should be small and light. These Heron drones are massive, and they're designed to carry heavy missiles into battle and to shoot them at targets capable of causing a lot of destruction, something that the German government is not currently considering, as it's not engaged in any kind of military activity that requires this sort of equipment. And in fact, not only will the German military not buy these drones, 100 drones, but only 16, they're not even buying them, they're just leasing them. And the drones are actually going to stay in Israel. They're not going to be delivered to Germany, so that they will be in air bases in Israel, and German soldiers can visit them and train with them in Israel. So this is something that really boggles the mind until you realize that the actual reason is economic and not military. And the truth is that the German government is trying to protect a German company called ThyssenKrupp, which is an arms company, among other things. And ThyssenKrupp has been selling submarines to the Israeli military for nearly 4 billion euros. And normally in the arms industry, deals are reciprocal. So Israel is expected to buy from ThyssenKrupp. If Israel is buying from ThyssenKrupp for 4 billion euros, ThyssenKrupp should buy something from Israel for a like amount of money. ThyssenKrupp already said there's nothing that we want to buy or need to buy from an Israeli company. So the German government is trying to save ThyssenKrupp from being blacklisted by the Israeli Ministry of Finance by spending way too much money on these drones that they don't really need. But if it is 1 billion euros, then that might convince the Israeli Ministry of Finance not to blacklist.
Wow. Sounds like a subsidy, basically, for ThyssenKrupp and maybe for the Israelis at the same time, no?
Yes, absolutely. And this is actually very important for the Israeli company, Israel Aerospace Industries, which is a failing company at the moment. Their sales are not so great, especially not in their civilian department. And in order to try to cover their losses on the civilian department, they try to sell as many weapons as possible, including to very suspicious governments and which violate international law and human rights. And this deal with Germany is a very big proportion of their overall sales. So if the deal doesn't go through, it's a very big blow for Israeli aerospace industries, and they're very concerned about that.
So the deal was supposed to go through last year, and at the last moment, the SPD stopped the deal just before the elections in Germany. Then in the negotiations for the coalition government between the Christian Democratic Union, the CDU, and the SPD resisted, including the drone deal in the coalition agreement. But now they've changed their minds. What made them change their minds just now?
I think it's very interesting because if you listen to the rhetoric of several members of the German parliament, the Bundestag, about how they talk about this deal, the SPD members usually use a language of rights and a language of international law. And they say, we want a drone that is not used for attack. So even if they are supporting the deal to buy, to lease the Heron drone, they want to lease a version of the Heron drone that doesn't carry a missile. Which is odd because the Heron drone was designed to carry heavy ordnance. But as soon as the Israeli military started killing Palestinian civilians in Gaza when the Great March of Return started on March 30. And they, of course, use a lot of the footage that the military is collecting from using various Israeli weapons, including drones, in attacking Palestinians. They're using that to promote their deals. And it's very interesting how the logic of the effectiveness of weapons, this kind of science fiction feel that the weapons give, or like a computer game feel that soldiers can use with remote control a weapon to kill civilians who have absolutely no way of defending themselves, is something that has actually defeated the logic of international law and convinced members of the SPD that the weapon is too cool, too nice to give up. And so they did change their mind. I think partially also the Israeli government is spending a lot of efforts in Germany to try to spin the killing of civilians in Gaza as a form of self-defense of the Israeli forces, and German politicians are expected by Israeli politicians to agree to that statement, to that framing of the events, and by supporting the deal, they're actually paying their homage to the Israeli lobby and to the Israeli government.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there for now. I'm speaking to Shir Hever, a Real News correspondent in Heidelberg, Germany. Thanks again for talking to us about this today, Shir.
Thanks, Greg.
And thank you for joining the Real News Network.